So let's start the session.
Yeah.
We're still doing Etherpad?
No, okay. So, yeah.
Can I
We
ask
start
a
a
question
previous
about-
session machinery. So we have a copy document open. The link is on RC package selection dash DX and UDS N. There are a couple of elements already in the document, so to provide an agenda for the discussion. Yeah, let's go.
Cool. Okay, so I'm sure you've all seen, looked at Unity at some point, and you've tried to use it with the mouse and stuff. That's fine. So I guess there's two things that need to be addressed for Unity accessibility. One of those is, of course, assistive technology implementation of some kind. The easiest way being to tie Unity, or the core Unity shell, into the AT-SPI framework. That's AT-SPI framework that GNOME uses for the traditional GNOME desktop and will be using for GNOME shell. Incidentally, it's also worth pointing out that the AT-SPI framework is a free desktop framework now. There's actually work ongoing to bridge Qt or Qt to using AT-SPI, and basically, so we've got AT-SPI, which traditionally was a GNOME-only framework, but is now being adopted and is actually being documented as being an ISO standard. But in the other area, which is going to benefit absolutely everybody, I swear, is keyboard navigation. As some of you may be aware, Unity has practically no keyboard navigation at all. It's mostly mouse-driven. So we also need to come up with a decent keyboard navigation model. Once we've got that will lend itself to helping assistive technology users a lot more easily, because the framework will be such that they navigate by the keyboard. The framework will return the information they need without them having to use any assistive technology specific tools to find out where they are and what they're doing. So,
Before we go into the different letters, I wanted to first talk about the goals we set for this release. That is, because Unity is moving on the desktop, because Unity is going to be a full desktop environment, so we realized that Unity needs to be accessible, and so we need to define what making Unity accessible means. That is, we have different parts in Unity that need to be usable by people with a variety of disabilities. So, sorry, by the way, if I'm not, politically correct or sometimes rude.
You're using all the American terminology.
So, so the three main areas, at least for me, initially would be the top panel, the left-hand side launcher, and places itself.
there's also the indicators, at least getting to the indicators. Since they're standard GTK, as long as we can, and at least from what I've found, you can actually arrow to and from, like side by side, to the indicators.
Yeah.
As long as we, like, keyboard navigation, all we need is a shortcut key to get up there.
Right. But not in Unity.
In GNOME there is.
Right, yeah, exactly. So Unity, the indicators also provide, they're part of the panel.
Yeah.
And we know a lot about them already
Yeah.
at that point. So
Yeah.
if there's anything extra we could do, we could do that.
Yeah, but if they're standard GTK, so, most of the standard GTK menus, from what I've gathered just by being able to use them in GNOME.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it's just the top, the actual
Yeah.
the top bar.
Yeah.
isn't standard.
Yeah.
It's just- yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so that's fine. So between the launch, there's a keyboard focus, right?
Yeah.
How do you? I've forgotten the key combination. How do you get keyboard focus onto the GNOME panel?
Okay. Traditionally, to navigate around the various bits and pieces in GNOME, you could, there's Alt-Tab to switch between active windows. So to move between the desktop and your panels, you could use Control-Alt-Tab. To me, that's rather clunky, especially for something like GNOME Shell, because we've only got 2-3 places at most where you want to be, and that all depends on what the context of what you're currently doing. So I certainly envisage, but at the same time, you want to be able to get to your launcher, for example, if you're in a web browser and you want to open up a text editor to copy some text.
Right.
So we need a shortcut key to jump to the launcher from anywhere.
Okay.
Now, when jumping to the launcher, I envisage, say, so there's two parts of it. There's getting to the launcher, and then there's navigating the launcher.
Sure.
I was thinking something along the lines of being able, like, you should be able to, well, personally, I would think being able to access the launcher as being able to arrow up and down through the icons as if I was navigating through a Nautilus file browser.
Right.
And at various points, by highlighting various icons, one, you would show something visually to indicate to you that you're on that icon.
It's focused.
Yeah, it's focused. And two, via the accessibility framework, the information about that icon is given, like just say the program name.
Right.
In addition, to indicate to the user whether that application is running. And maybe if the user wanted even more information, if it's running, we can tell them how many windows, how many tabs,
Right.
whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
We also need to access the quick list. I think that there's a context menu, which
Yeah.
essentially is. Again, we need, because that's not a standard GTK menu, we then need to implement being able to arrow through that with the arrow keys.
Yeah.
Also have key shortcut accelerators, as in, if you've got, like, say, file, new message, whatever, blah, blah, open, so like N for new, open for O, so you press the key immediately, the menu selects, closes, and enacts makes your action. But also be able to arrow through using arrow keys and press enter. At this point, to make sure that things are still mostly the same from the traditional GNOME environment, I think maybe Shift F10 being the traditional context menu key would probably be appropriate for this.
So that's for the launchers.
Yes, you'll be able to access the quick list on the launcher.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to select a launch icon, you just need to press enter.
And then, so we can do a key combination to get keyboard focus
Onto the launcher, yeah.
and then keyboard combination to get a keyboard focus onto the panel.
Well, the only thing on the panel that's relevant is indicators. If
What
we use
about the application menus?
but that's standard GTK, isn't it?
But you're unable to get them off the panel.
But if you say use Alt F or Alt O to bring up a menu, shouldn't that just work?
That works, but we don't actually underline anything, or we can't present that information to anybody.
Right, I guess.
Through Unity right now.
Right. So we need to look at that.
So this is an interesting pattern actually for defining the goals. That is, we're trying to find the baseline. That is what GNOME currently does. I mean, the classic GNOME desktop environment currently does, in order to find out what the launcher and the panel and potentially the places should support. We'll talk a bit more about the scope after that. And one thing I would like to have at this point in discussion also is the notion of the Rick Spencer meter. That is, at some point we need to see how much of that baseline we're supporting. We should support all of the baseline plus potentially some nice to have features on top of that. Because this is what through this Rick Spencer meter grid that we're going to be judged, and how we're going to assess whether Unity is ready for the accessibility community.
Is it worth also discussing the relative priority of the different items?
So, yes, I think it's coming there.
Right. I have a bunch of questions. Let me ask
Go ahead. Yeah.
and then we can figure out what's important, what's not.
Yeah.
So obviously on the panel you have the application menus, and then you have all the indicators
Yeah.
as well. So a key combination together isn't a big deal, and then you can have that right focus. What do you normally do in GNOME for systray, like old systray stuff?
Old systray stuff. Now this is where we get back to the clunkiness. You navigate to the panel, Control Alt Tab.
Yeah.
You tab through your various icons you literally. So if I was to, from a GNOME desktop now, I tab the Control Alt Tab to on my panel. Then the first object is the menu system, which you can get to with Alt F1 anyway. So that's not important. I press Tab, I move to the first launcher icon, which I think is email or Firefox or something. Then you tab through those. Then you tab through the individual elements. So like, for example, the Network Manager systray icon. And I tab to that. If I want to use it, I press Enter to bring up the menu, or Shift F10 to do that. That's why I'm just like,
Okay. So it actually takes you to the individual icons as you
Individual icons, yes. Not all of them present their information properly via the framework, so you've actually got to press Control F1 to show the tooltip, which gets red or whatever. So
Okay.
which is why I'm saying it's clunky. If everything's in indicators, if we can just jump to the indicators area, we've got everything.
Right, we would normally, but if you're running a wine application, like if it's not
Right.
some,
If it's a one application,
Yeah.
you're generally not, we're probably not you're running a one application if you're using the accessibility framework because it's not accessible.
okay.
But yes, it's certainly a legacy application. I don't know what your guys' plans are for handling legacy systrace stuff. So
Is
So
that listed up in there?
can you repeat that again so I capture it properly? Also, I noticed that there is someone in blue at the top of the document that is probably
Oops, sorry, that's me. I thought.
okay.
I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure who was taking notes and then it didn't grow. So.
Yeah, because I'm also at the bottom of the document. So
To rotate-
that's
to
fine.
rotate-
I'll
okay,
control
yeah.
the charge.
I think that's good.
Yeah. I'm ready.
So what should I capture? Sorry.
You know, we can initially implement.
Yeah.
So,
So-
Control tab
Control Alt Tab.
takes you to Control Alt
Oh.
takes you to panel,
Mhm.
and then you have.
You have to tab for everything.
You can't just use the arrow keys.
Oh,
Tab?
it does no. Well, if you control tab to the panel and you try and use arrow keys, you'll go into the menus. I think the arrow keys work on it once you're over to the launches, but I don't think it always lands properly.
So tab to navigate between indicators. Mostly.
Oh, yeah.
But I think longer term arrow keys would be
Entries. Yeah. I think we can do arrow keys as long as you haven't activated them.
Yeah.
But we can play around with
Yeah,
that to see
yeah.
which one works.
Yeah.
And you need a keyboard shortcut for the indicators. At least messaging and sessions support that, right?
Just to get to the in GNOME you've got Meta M or Super M, whatever it is,
Yeah.
to get to the indicators, which actually conflicts with the comp's keyboard
Yeah,
command.
negative
believe it or not.
or-
Yes. But whenever I say use Super M to get to the indicators, it'll bring me up to the first indicator, it'll drop down the menu automatically.
Yeah.
Then I can use the arrow keys to find the menu I want and select the option I want. Or if I want adjustment sound, I can use the arrow
This
keys.
this is part of this as well as another problem that we don't support, currently support the indicators, the shortcuts.
Yep.
Super M.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I've asked
Right.
Ted to move that down into the .so so we do. Alright, so at that point we've got panel, keyboard focusing, launcher, keyboard focusing. The meta key will bring up places, dash. Okay? It doesn't do that now.
What do you mean the meta key will bring up?
So, clicking it. The super key, sorry.
Yeah.
When you press it, it will bring up dash into global search.
Okay, then just leave you there.
I just needed
Okay.
with the text entry
Yeah.
active.
Okay, right.
And so the idea is well, it's not just for accessibility, but it's
Yeah.
a massive UX failure that we don't have any of the keyboards involved.
Yeah.
Obviously, at that point, you can search, you can tab between groups, like
Right.
between groups,
Yeah.
exactly what
Yeah.
you'd expect them to.
So if the search thing is sort of, you type in your search results, they're dynamically updated, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. In terms of accessibility framework stuff, we need to work out just how we want to present the user as to the information to the user as to how many results or whatever.
Right, we have.
But we probably need to look at the UI and think, do we tab into it or do we use another combination? Probably a tab, I don't know. Maybe be part of the tab order, I don't know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The idea was to have it part of the tab order, just like you would
Yeah.
any other.
Yeah, GTI dialogue, yeah.
Yeah, if that helps.
Yes, they keep. I'm trying like in doing all this, I'm trying to keep concepts the same so that I know blind users tend to have a lot of pushback about things that change.
Mhm.
So if we can keep things the same for them, they're more likely to be on board with it. So
Okay, at this stage, a question, and also get back to the initial goal topic or section. So we're considering accessibility, but it can take many forms.
yeah,
So here we've been discussing keyboard shortcuts or
And keyboard navigation.
navigation. Are there other aspects of the design, in particular, as Johnny is here, that should be adjusted? In particular, for the different kinds of disabilities, we'll have to consider.
This is where the theming issue comes up, or?
for people who have low vision who don't need magnification but just need large fonts, yeah, theming is the lack of theming is an issue. Again, I'm approaching this from person with my needs, low visual blindness, I don't have expertise in a lot of the other disability fields, so I can't easily comment on what they require.
So I mean, we would support large fonts. I mean, we would have to make the panel support that
Yeah.
properly as well.
Yeah.
Places should support that. And should social.
So large fonts.
Like colours and stuff.
Well, when we have Unity being thing, then we can do a big high contrast thing. When Unity is themed as well, that can then use a high contrast theme.
Okay, so the idea currently was to make the panel bit themed, so it matches the theme. The dash wasn't really going to change,
Okay.
but we can. I mean, we can detect that it's one of the high contrast themes and do something.
Or can we consider that the size of the icons already, plus an increase in the font size for the tooltip would be sufficient or would be acceptable?
I mean, it's something that's going to need user testing to be able to
So
really.
it's something we can come to.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the testing, you would probably be able to do some
Yeah.
about what, what does and doesn't work in the current.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so this is the visual aspect of it.
Yeah. I know as someone with mobility impairment, the things, I mean, for me, it's having a good on-screen keyboard that I can use, because I actually do a lot more mouse control, but I need to be able to type using my mouse too, and stuff like that.
I throw fonts. I start with the number 14 font on my computer because I can't see anything smaller than that.
So I mean, places would be mostly actually one place. The panel doesn't grow bigger to correctly with the font size. So we have to
Yeah,
use
that creates problems.
Yeah, exactly. So
So
we'd fix that.
one aspect on the places, so we can go a bit more into what we do to have the places accessible, but considering the design adjustment or planning for NADI that is using analysis a bit more than we were using during the last cycle, it means that there would always be a way for users to manage files and folders, which means to me that the files place actually don't have to be shouldn't need to be a priority like a must or
It is.
to have.
So
Because the thing is keyboard navigation will have, if we implement it correctly, would affect every place anyway automatically. We're not implementing it inside each place individually, we're implementing it. And we need to do that, right?
Are there other places?
Sorry?
I mean, we have the files place and the applications place.
But there's no difference between them
Sure.
for Unity, right? And then the focus, whatever's in focus at the moment, we would just provide the data to the accessibility framework to say,
Yeah.
this is what's in focus.
Yeah.
But I mean, Unity doesn't know that applications place, evolutions and whatever. It just it has URIs and then it tries to construct something useful.
with having Nautilus in the next version of Unity, that means that using the files and folders place is completely optional. So I would say other elements of Unity should be prioritised after files and folders place. That then brings us on to the applications place. Now, the applications place at the moment can't be completely avoided, but we could make it so it could be avoided. So we're going to have the applications place and the software center. The reason you need the applications place and you can't use the software center is for launching an application that isn't in the launcher. So if we could add the launch application or place an application in the launcher from the software center. I'm not sure how accessible the software center is, but that would...
It's likely WebKit driven, which is still being worked on upstream to be tied to the accessibility framework.
Okay, so that's not going to be any win.
Can I just had it, because I was still doing the questions. So normally when you're using a screen reader or something, do you only get information on what's focused?
Generally, yeah, information is restricted. Like generally, information you're given is restricted to, what's focused. It has the ability, for example, when you get the design is such so that if you say get a notification, the notification does get read to you.
Okay.
So that there are certain things that generally aren't considered in focus that will give you information, but it's generally the window and the current widget that you have, that you're on, that you're wanting to get information about.
And is there anything else with that information, like the area on screen where it is exactly or anything like that?
I think the framework provides for that, and when with correct tying that happens, but I haven't looked into that in much detail yet to be sure.
And what about things like scrolling, like scroll bars, and how are they conveyed?
Well, if you're looking at a standard text, like thinking of a standard GTK text widget,
Think of Nautilus, that's better. So Nautilus is icon view.
yeah, it just the framework just gets told about the next icon. Like it doesn't visually, whatever. If it's scrolling,
Yeah.
the user doesn't know.
So we can. So I mean, so one thing to understand is, so don't think of application space and file space. Same thing, places, right? We can't not do one and do the other or anything like that. If we have, so we need keyboard navigation inside places, and it seems like the only thing we need to do once we have focus is ping the internal accessibility manager or whatever, and say this is what's focused.
So you
with
get
the
arrow
information
around,
or whatever.
arrow around the C.
So it seems we would start off doing launcher and panel, because we're not doing places for a few weeks anyway, because we're waiting for a design iteration on it, so you won't have places. And I don't think it's a major problem inside Unity to add a shortcut key to take you to the panel and do keyboard navigation there, and the same as the launcher. And then while you're working on this ATK still would...
LibATK I think is probably the most relevant because other bits and pieces of the stack are still a bit in flux.
Okay.
So
ATK.
Yeah.
LibATK.
Yeah.
So while you're then being able to add support for that, we could move on to places as me and Gord are writing it, and make sure that it's keyboard navigation from the start, and etc. etc. And then you can come over to that. I mean, is that a good plan? Is it,
Also remember we need to implement keyboard nav for the launcher as well.
Yes, so panel and launcher. Together, because they kind of just solve the same problems, but one's horizontal and one's vertical.
So I think it's important that we note that the priority is the launcher and the panel first, and that the places will come next in terms of the schedule and the development plan.
So another thing I was talking about, maybe not for this cycle, but would be maybe interesting, was so Unity knows way more about what it's showing than GNOME panel ever did. And maybe that's we can do more then with accessibility in a later date, because we know what we're showing, we could have easier shortcuts, easier things, really make sure that it's a first-class experience. If you need to get to applications, if you need to get whatever. So.
And if you're doing ATK anyway, then you sort of get text cursor tracking more or less for free. So
that means we can also then tie into the eSIM plugin for computers and provide notification to, including text tracking.
You sort of get it. This is
I was actually talking with David this morning about, I think all the developers are working with the Donut Shop guys to implement the debug-based API for magnification. Maybe we need to look at that and or to be able to drive the eSIM plugin that way.
I'm actually going up there and and they were actually talking about getting text and cursor tracking and Compass before learning what you need.
I've opened an infrastructure section in the document, so to talk about which infrastructure we're going to use, being the libraries, the protocols, and the tools we need to integrate with. So in the case of the protocol, my understanding is that by using the ATK, we can be isolated from the underlying AT's
That's right,
dbus shift or change or
that's
migration.
Right. That's right.
So which means that if we use the ATK, we're safe. Okay.
As far as I understand things from going by what has been happening upstream. So
Okay.
So then maybe you and I can spend, I mean, we don't have to do it now. But you can figure out how we'll architect this.
All the fun stuff.
In terms of the tools we need to integrate with this, so we're mentioning Orca, there's
There's
a couple
like
of
there's
them.
the various GNOME on-screen keyboards like.
Yeah, there are a bunch of projects. I know tomorrow there's a solving the on-screen keyboard thing. It's
Mhm.
multi-touch related, but it may
Oh.
also really heavily, may also, because like, there's onboard, which is what we have in, but somebody came to me saying, who wrote that? What's the history behind onboard? And I
The
didn't,
history was it was a Google Summer of Code project.
yeah.
Henrik Nielsen Nama, Henrik, you know the.
Onboard's what we currently have, and we're about the only project that uses it, which was why people came to me and said, where did Ubuntu get this from? And it turned out it was Google Summer of Code and stuff. So, but there are a whole bunch in there. There's one that seems to be getting a lot of interest in GNOME accessibility. It's brand new, called Caribou.
Yeah.
I happen to use one that's not a traditional on-screen keyboard, called Dasher.
Yeah.
Which I love dearly, but I have my own rants. Problem development issues, not
So-
problems with it.
And the on-screen keyboard in with Unity is not working because Unity isn't paying attention to input methods. I'm assuming.
Which I haven't tried. I haven't had a chance.
I think
to try
Dasher uses that Spice somewhere, doesn't it?
it does, but it doesn't have debug support yet.
Right.
I'm not sure if they're going to put it in or not.
There's the Screen by Fire.
In Unity? Oh, that's Cellwriter. I haven't tried Cellwriter either.
So here
They all have
also-
different ways of working.
Which is why I was asking.
Okay, so that's another thing we need
We
to.
can talk also about keeping potentially, that is at least in key and QT application, and then that is
Cellwriter,
the
yeah.
kind of best effort we can do to also
Yeah.
It's a concern.
see what we can do here.
But,
So tools, or can we absolutely need to
Yeah,
have
or
it
is it-
working well with our system?
Yeah.
On-screen keyboard, we need some feedback from the platform as for which one they will choose. I'm assuming, but that needs testing, that as long as we're exposing the interface.
If we tie the framework incorrectly, things should just work. Yeah.
I think that's.
I know the other thing listed under tools here is screen magnifiers. Also, I would put on there not screen readers, but other voice synthesis programs such as Festival. Because I know people who are mute who use Festival on Ubuntu. Literally, is how they talk to people. And for them, it seems to work better than eSpeak. But
Yeah.
I don't know if that's all stuff that really, as long as the framework is there.
I think
Once
maybe
it's written,
I think
it
Orca
should-
could be extended to do what they want though.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this was, so.
We need to. I think some of these use input methods and GTK, and we need to support them
Yeah.
as well.
The Dasher is also about the
On-screen keyboard.
on-screen. Okay.
Yeah.
I mentioned it for Screen My Files. So there's something in GNOME, there's something in Compass. Which one should we use?
Yeah, as I was just saying, the Orca and GNOME Shell devs are working on a dbus-based API that Orca can use to drive a magnifier within GNOME Shell.
Yeah. Which to me is looking like it's going to be a good thing. I don't know what you think.
So we can just implement that.
Well,
We sort of prototyped it in 2007. They had the debus interface for driving the magnifier interface.
Yeah, but it's not catches on.
I'm bigger.
so I guess
You
we
can get your magnifier too.
yeah, I guess instead of using on copies, we could drive easily with that API. I mean,
It's designed for it.
GNOME Shell.
Sorry?
It's designed for
Yeah.
it. It already listens for it. You just need a map one-to-one with it.
yeah. Okay. Cool.
And so I'm putting in action items to get feedback from the platform. Is there someone from platform
From people.
yeah, who, package selection, which tool you recommend? As are you going to recommend Caribou, Dasher, Onboard?
Well, that's essentially would come down to people.
Of that.
I think there are some more other keyboard, virtual keyboard. I think there is a session, I'm not sure it's
Yeah, tomorrow morning.
tomorrow morning, so because on board is not very good for touch screen particularly, so
Okay.
maybe
Yeah.
there should be some people from accessibility to so that we
It's on
don't
my
remove
list.
our
We'll do that.
Okay.
Being, I think, the only person here who might
So
regularly
we can-
use any sort of on-screen keyboard.
And
It's on my list.
this is the thing. I can certainly cover the low vision and general keyboard navigation, but I need people who have either people they know or themselves who've got expertise in other
Yeah, and one thing,
accessibility fields to help.
one thing we haven't talked about yet, and unfortunately, none of the people I know who know about this, who are here this week, oh, you're here, is learning disabilities. I think from what I've seen of Unity, there may be things about Unity that will actually make it slightly easier because you've got the large icons there and stuff
Okay.
like that, but I don't know.
So you need to talk to this man, John Lee.
Yeah.
Exactly. 19.
Yep. I've already been told that I just poke him all the time, but
Okay.
but that may also,
What's
you know,
coming?
I don't know if there's anything, I don't know what you know about in terms of programs that may need accessibility features, or if it's mostly a design thing, from what you know.
From my perspective, it's more of a design thing.
Okay.
And the school district I work in doesn't use Linux yet, so I can tell you what they're using and what I've had to put in place with students, and a variation from quadriplegics that were using a pointing device to try to tap a keyboard.
That's where on-screen keyboards come up in a lot too. I mean, not an Ubuntu user, but a friend who literally accesses her entire computer through a switch. So,
And the
and she's the person who told me about Dasher, and that's how she types.
the interesting thing is when you were talking about touch, the keys on the touch screens tend to be larger than the keyboards.
Dasher also uses AtSpy because it has a
Use it, and they don't-
screen reader
Got it.
option. Alan.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So yeah, that's like
Is there something to do with
Yeah, that's the other thing.
That's like
actually
fallback
important to speech spectrums. It's using whatever speech spectrum.
Well, that's the whole we don't know. Because Patrick's not telling anybody.
Yeah.
Okay. So what else was on the agenda?
So I'm just trying to make sure we haven't missed anything in this Unity. Panel, launcher, faces, indicators,
The global menu being
Alt
the
tab, things
button.
like that.
So Alt tab's the Windows switcher.
Yeah.
If we're using the competence Windows switcher, which is accessible.
It is.
Yes, it is. It's, well, at least with Orca, I can get feedback about the window I'm switching to.
Yeah. Suggested you know.
Just make a note about that so we don't break it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we'll be in that code.
Don't touch.
No, Jason will be in that code. That's dangerous.
Yeah, so if we're using the existing competence Windows switcher, we're essentially.
How does that
And if
work?
there's
I
something
mean,
specific we
how
want,
does it transmit that information?
I think it uses libATK.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it doesn't because well, I might be mistaken.
I don't know. I haven't looked closely. I
I'm
don't
going
know.
to check.
so there's something important here. We're using the rewrite of Compass, which has ported plugins, and therefore we need real testing
Yeah.
that all of those didn't
Yeah.
break. So we'll get it. Didier, when can we get it into archives or PPA or something? Compass with all its plugins.
There is still the little glitches, you know, the image we have, so
But if
I will wait for ODET 9.2.1.
Alright, so we have someone working on those.
So end of next week, I guess. I can release also the early.
We can deal with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, all that stuff that you
just leave it as a
put down, all this needs to be retested.
Okay, so back to the agenda, see how we're doing. So do you have a definition of the baseline, that is what node is doing, etc., against which we can be rated to know whether we're really accessible? Thanks, Bobby. Well, I still have the text in front of me. We also have a good notion of the scope, you know, of the different elements of Unity that we need to make accessible, the launcher, panel, places, etc. So I wanted to talk a bit about the toolkits and implications, maybe. In terms of design aspects, we've also touched a couple of elements, and John has taken feedback on design adjustment that may be helpful for icon sizes, fonts, maybe a bit of colors, so that you can cover a wider variety of possibilities.
Yeah.
What's this in, sorry?
Design aspect that
No, as in which application?
Like Unity, like
the
fonts,
launcher and the panel,
places and stuff.
having
fonts,
larger
colours.
fonts.
So that will use your system fonts, whatever you set up.
Is that, yeah?
Yes.
So as long as we use the system fonts, we're good.
Yes.
Okay, so that should
At least in that
actually-
case, what the panel doesn't do is if you have a font that ends up as 30 pixels, it doesn't actually become 30 pixels, 35 pixels high to take that interval. I'll add that in. So it works.
mention the tools to integrate with, the platform aspect, the BTK and so on. And at this point, I had just 2 elements left, the development plan, that is some notions of scheduling, and so some elements here, and the test plan, to echo the session we had this morning on testing and accessibility testing in particular. So I'm not sure if Gopi is going to come back. Apparently, or actually finishing the part about the scope and toolkits implementation in particular. So the scope for Unity accessibility is mostly to
That was back, by the way.
Unity's elements being accessible.
Yeah.
Applications running, within the Unity shell are either node applications, bundle applications, maybe 3D applications.
Yes.
We're relying on these applications and their toolkits
To be accessible. Yeah.
Right, so just to clarify that we don't have any particular actions here in terms of enabling them in terms of accessibility. However, is there anything we need to consider, not to break certain assumptions these applications are, based
Not
on?
that I know of. I'm still learning the guts of the accessibility frameworks myself, so I don't know, but I don't think so.
Maybe feedback from KDE? Let's see.
Well, Qt is just not accessible to that spot. So.
But there's work on them.
Yeah.
There's a pretty
But
big
it's
one.
like
Yeah.
a year or so, at least down the road. It's pretty far down the road. It's not-
Should have been out 1.0, but they are planning on having it out next release. So.
Okay. So, is there anything particular we should have in mind? If ever KDE
Well, they're going to use AppSpy.
They use AppSpy for the debug interface anyway.
Yeah. Well, the basically.
We use DBus.
Yeah. So okay.
I'm
So,
not programmers.
okay. So yeah, the fact. Okay. So just to clarify a bit of history, AppSpy used to be a GNOME-only framework and used Bonobo/Orbit, or otherwise known as Core. AppSpy has now been moving to being a free desktop project and will use dbus for communication. This has allowed it to be a lot more modular, so there's currently three pieces to AppSpy. There's the libATK interface, there's the core that's got the registry data and stuff, and then there's Python bindings. The KDE bridge, /Qt bridge, will be similar to the ATK bridge in that regard. It will be a separate module that will talk between Qt and via dbus to the AppSpy framework.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So that's it.
That's pretty much it. So can we finish on development plan and test plan? That's the last two elements I have on the agenda. So development plan, what I have? Well, not too much so far. It's in the action items. So
Feedback. So is it just good to mail Ubuntu the accessibility list and say, guys, we added this keyboard navigation, we think it's
I mean,
okay.
Yeah, well, I'll be hammering it anyway.
Okay.
So
Also, I'm kind of the go-to person for anything that doesn't need coding done.
Yep.
Just about, literally, if you have any other questions, come find me. If I don't know the answer, I can find someone who will. And I can find, Luke and I are also going to try to meet like weekly or so. I'm also coordinating with the GNOME accessibility team. They asked me to talk with them about what we're doing with Unity, since they're going through, I think, similar sorts of issues at times with the GNOME shell. So they've really asked for that.
I guess
And I also have a list of kind of who are the poke people in various platforms.
I guess one question from a visual perspective, do you have anything in mind to how you will identify visually whether icons are being selected with arrow keys on the places like launcher?
We don't right now,
Okay.
but we do need to have.
Consider
That's
that.
a problem.
Yeah.
So I think Otto should work with the accessibility list because that doesn't need to have glows or anything. It needs to be functional. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so we've got, I think what we were going to try to do, if I remember correctly from our discussion on Monday, we're going to try to see if we can, once things are starting to be built, we can get daily builds or so.
I'm going to try and see what I can do about getting some testing available for people on Maverick earlier.
Yes.
Because
Especially lucid.
people with disabilities, they don't like to break their system. If it breaks, they can't use it. So if we can provide
Now
something,
we don't have the money for a second system.
if they
So
can't.
we will have per commit builds, so that could be
Yeah.
2 in a day.
Yeah.
There'll be for Maverick. We want testing on Maverick basically. The hard part is how to do. Didier's looking at me really. The hard bit. Oh, by the way, if you didn't know, we need it for Maverick. The hard part is how to separate it out enough that you can enter this shell.
Right.
And it's fun to use, probably
Yeah.
very broken.
And
And then you can go back out and actually use your system.
And Charlie's writing test cases so that people without impairments can say, okay, this is what I need to do to be able to test this properly.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of removes the ways that you can cheat and stuff like that because, you know, because a lot of them are really simple. You want to test what it's like for a blind user? Turn off your screen or put a piece of paper over it, you know. Yeah. We have someone who literally wrote an install guide that way because he wanted to see what he'd been hearing complaints about the installer. He wanted to see what it was like. You know, it's a certain thing. So, you know, people, you know, we'd love to say, oh, everybody who will test this has impairments. We don't have enough people by a long shot to have that.
Cool. So,
That's something we were discussing already this morning.
yes.
Quickly on the development plan, because we have like a few minutes left. So I've already put a set of action items along with milestones. Was mostly, Alpha 1 is we won't have much time to deliver anything except adjusting with platform, getting some feedback and so on. I think Alpha 2 is more the time when we will be
We'll do
actually,
keynote.
be able to.
Can I ask if Alpha 2 is involved in this?
It depends on whether they choose Unity as their shell.
Yeah. And I'm working.
And that's something to bear in mind. Every derivative has their own choice as to what shell it is. So,
Right.
and
And
I say
I know there are
that
people on the Ubuntu team who are interested in accessibility.
Yeah, it just seems like that would be natural.
So, you know, I think there's stuff that's happening and, you know, they're going to decide what they decide about, you know, what they use. And we'll work with them as we can.
If you go to no shell right now, isn't it? They're using no?
Yeah,
Yeah.
with no shell, with KDE apps included.
More than likely, yeah, if Ubuntu migrates over to Unity,
They may or may not.
they may or may not.
They're using GNOME shell, or they're using
They're
GNOME
using
desktop.
They're using
GNOME
desktop
currently, so-
environment.
As in
desktop.
GNOME Panorama.
They're using the GNOME desktop environment. Some of the KDE apps have it in
Interesting.
to further complicate.
As you go. Yeah.
Yes, I think we're done. So Alpha 2, the launcher, the panel indicators and so on. Alpha 3, more the places API and places view for development. Test plan, so I've noted the support from the community, the support we're getting from the community on those, managing the inflow of bugs. So that Luke in particular can focus.
Also, in terms of testing and bugs, the bug squad has made the decision that they're willing to mark every single accessibility bug in the next cycle as medium or higher in priority. So, so that we can really get these done. we've also talked to John about getting a lot more visibility and stuff, so these things are getting.
To the person on ISC,
Yeah.
we don't know yet, but it'll be configurable through
And,
Yeah.
decom.
and yeah, most
We'll
probably,
document it as it is known.
as Luke was saying, trying to find, to adopt something that is familiar to
Yeah.
Ubuntu users already. All right.
Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, but it could change.
That's me, I've got a lot of reading to do.
Comments
Yeah, well,
before the timeout?
I'd just like to say thanks all for your support.
Yeah.
Accessibility really hasn't got enough attention in the past, and we really need to keep the attention focused on it because, like as I said with keyboard navigation, it's going to benefit everyone. So, thank you.
It does benefit everybody.
Thanks
Thanks for working.
Open my
Yeah.
Couldn't do it.
It's really cool.